Hey, how's it going? I hope you're doing good. So I'm sitting here. Um, I I'm sitting here, and I was just talking to my daughter on the phone, and I was talking to her. What I was gonna do is I was getting like stuff ready to do a video, and I was trying to get the light to like work because I couldn't get the light to work, and then the light worked. And, sometimes in houses you have light switches that there's light switches that then turn on outlets. And I couldn't figure out if one of these light switches doesn't actually turn anything on or off, I don't think. But when I turn it on, it makes there's like a humming noise. And so I thought maybe it allows there's like a little heater in the bathroom. Maybe it allows that heater to turn on or something. I don't really know. Um, but but sometimes in homes and apartments you have these light switches that either turn on the outlets or sometimes they don't actually turn anything on. And then the other type is where there's two switches and one turns it on. If you turn it, either both can be on or both can be off, or if one off and one on, it kind of alternates or whatnot. um my mom has got to get my mom is going to have we've had these light fixtures downstairs in the kitchen area, and they were put in, I don't remember how long ago, but basically they've like sort of like disintegrated and collapsed, sort of like they had these fixtures around the light, and then those eventually eroded or corroded. They were metal, I think, and then they just collapsed off the light. And like one would happen like early in like late at night, and it would crash on the floor, and the light bulb would crash everywhere. And so after like three or four of these corroding and collapsing. Um, she's eventually, my mom eventually has to get it fixed or whatever, and somebody's got to come in and she wants to change how it's done and stuff. And so, uh, so yeah, so with those fixtures and everything, um, there's just sometimes things in homes or apartment that doesn't it's not necessarily how you want it to be done, or there's just weird things about it that don't make a lot of sense. So anyhow, uh, I've just sort of been sitting and doing stuff um, at home, for a little while, and trying to figure out stuff to do. I guess it's a little bit different, when you have so much that is going on. You're just like doing stuff all the time, and then sometimes you're not doing stuff all the time, and um, I don't know. I just kind of um, try to do better, most of the time and whatnot. So I've been drinking more water, and so which has been good. I've been going to the store and buying. Somehow I found that if I spend a little bit more on a bottle of water, um, this is a Fiji bottle of water. It's like $2 or $3. I somehow drink it, and I guess I enjoy it a little bit more. I think one of my posts a while back, I bought just a regular bottle of water that was like 35 cents, and I don't always know what the difference is. Whether this has a lot of information. It says it's from Fiji, you know, um, and I don't know. Sometimes I just get, most of the time I just get the bottles of water at Costco. But if I go to lunch, I sometimes go pick up lunch at the grocery store. Um, they have cold, refrigerated, drinks and stuff. And so um, I get this bottle. But if I was, one of the problems with this bottle is it's square. And so if you try to put it in, a seat holder in a car, it won't do that. Most of the time, it won't do that because it's square. Um, so I don't know, but yeah, my daughter was really like, oh, I want you to drink all water and don't drink anything other than water. And I said, well, sometimes I have something else to drink or whatever. But, uh, but yeah, I've been trying to drink more water and um, just do other regular stuff. And, what I was going to do is uh, look up music, um, that's like content free or whatever. But then I was like, oh, I don't know, no, I'm not really too interested in that or whatever. And, I bought a burger today. This is a burger. I bought a burger. So the other post I made on YouTube and Facebook was about this place called the Burger Grill, and the Burger Grill is like right on Main Street, and it's in a nice building, and they have burgers and they have soups and stuff, and you can go in for lunch, and it's kind of nice. There's there's taxes and stuff for the location where it is, but they have a pretty good burger. They do sell. They have they've got different burgers. They've got like a Kobe burger and a cheeseburger. They have a burger, they call it a double burger. And I don't know if there's any copyright with In-N-Out or whatever, but it's just sort of a nice burger place. And then their prices have gone up a little bit over the past few years. So anyway, this is a place I went to called Lefty's, and Lefty's has been there for a long time, and they do a bunch of different types of burgers. And I already ate part of what I got, so I haven't been as hungry for eating another burger. I may eat the burger later. What I found though is that I've started to just not be as hungry. Or when I eat a meal, I eat a lot less. I can't eat like a whole plate of food. Like I'll go and I'll get a plate of food, and it has like a potato or something, a vegetable, or potato and bread and salad, and then some type of meat or something. And I can't eat the whole plate or whatever. I can just eat part of it. But I'm not, I'm not really, I get full really quickly, but I don't really, I don't really, I don't really notice, like, it's not like I'm losing a lot of weight or anything like that. It's just, I'm eating like, smaller amounts. It's just, there hasn't really been any change, to me other than just eating less. So, yeah, so that's what I've been doing or whatever. I have I've got a lot of different old devices. I've been noticing this that I've had for a while, and you keep them, and then you don't really know what to do. You can throw them out, but it's kind of like a waste to throw them out. And then you say, well, what if like you couldn't get, a phone? You couldn't get, a phone, whether, there was a chip shortage, stuff like that. Could I really use some of this stuff? And I did some posts about that. I got some old iPads to work, and I've used those iPads. And if the battery doesn't work, you can just, you just keep it plugged in or whatever. This iPhone, I don't actually remember what number this is. It looks like this. And what happened to this iPhone is it got a timer on it that had like, I don't know, a high number in the millions of minutes on here. And I thought, oh, it's like a time capsule or something. I will just, I will just keep it. And then, I couldn't, at the time, I was like, how do I calculate the minutes or whatever? Something's gone wrong with it. And then eventually the battery, like it stopped actually being able to load. I could charge it a little bit. Now it doesn't even load. I can't get that load screen to work. So I thought, well, should I throw it away? And the other thing was like, oh, well, keep it. Keep all these old iPhones. Like, what do you do with your old iPhone and stuff? And I went through a whole period before I eventually became homeless where I had to throw out a bunch of stuff. I just had to get rid of it. It wasn't going to fit. Like, if you go to a smaller apartment, all your stuff's not going to fit. Other stuff, you're like, I'm probably not going to do that activity anymore. Like I had some boxing gear, some kickboxing stuff. I was like, I'm not really going to do that anymore. And so, I had Bitcoin machines and probably stuff, what I've been telling my mom when you think about like getting rid of stuff or moving or stuff, it's sort of like, having, a coffee maker that you may have bought for $150 or $200 or $80 or whatever. And, it still makes coffee. But like if you were to try to sell it, for $20 or $15 or $30, right? You probably won't get anyone that will actually say, oh yeah, I'll buy that from you. In any reasonable amount of time, right? If you have, a warehouse or something where people can come look, somebody may eventually, want to buy or pay that much for it. But, if you try to sell it for what you think it's worth, no one, you don't get any like bids or anything. Nobody says, oh yeah, I'll buy that or whatever. And so, when I lived in New York City, a lot of times, people would just discard things. They would leave things on the street, the sidewalk or whatever. Or if you did, like you would go down and there would be garbage cans and you can put a coffee maker there. And then, 15 minutes later you come down and it's gone. Somebody's already come by and taken it or whatever, so it's kind of a weird thing to deal with that. If it was free, somebody would immediately snatch it in a big city, not snatch it, but immediately take it and use it or sell it or do whatever with it. But if you try to do like a listing, there used to be Craigslist and now there's Amazon Marketplace, whatever. If you actually list it and took the time and took the photos of it, and I did that stuff with older stereos and stuff, and you just get like very little interest at all, if any. Sometimes you get somebody that says, oh, will you give it to me for free? I had that too. I did stuff where I did stuff on eBay and it was somebody said, oh, it's for education. Can you just give it to me or whatever? And so, I don't remember what I did if I ended up doing that and just saying, yeah, I've already done the display. I've taken the photos. You said you were interested in it. Now it's going to be a donate thing type thing. But, so you end up with some of this stuff that you don't really immediately throw away. And so, oh, this phone just came on. This phone just came on. Okay. So this phone I really liked. This is a Motorola. I think it's an E something. Not E5, but E9 or something. And these phones are different because the whole back will come off of this phone. You can take the whole back off. And I think the battery in this one you can remove. I got another phone where you can't take the battery out, but the battery you can take out in this phone, and it's already lighting up. It's connecting. It has no service or anything. It's just connecting right to the Wi-Fi. I must have connected it to the Wi-Fi. And this Motorola was a really good phone because when I was homeless at a shelter in Seattle, my phones had gotten cut off. So I had an account with I think it was Sprint, and then Sprint was merging with T-Mobile, but it hadn't merged yet. And I had somehow set up a payment system where I thought I had funding and I could pay the bill and I transferred money or whatever, something like that. And the phone, like all at the same time, it was like, I was supposed to go to a doctor, and there was I got angry about wearing a mask or something, and I went for a walk. My mom had left, and in that time that I was going for this walk, my phones got cut off. And then my phones got cut off, and I couldn't make any phone calls or anything from the phone. And then that night I ended up going to like the men's shelter or whatever. And so, but I think I still had my wallet, um, and I had my phone, but there was no service on it. So I sort of had to figure out what I was going to do, with that or whatever. And I quickly realized that in order to talk to my mom, if I was ever going to, like, I didn't know what was going to happen. Am I going to get out of the shelter, or am I going to end up getting kicked out of the shelter and then have no place at night to sleep? Was my mom not going to give me, any more of this, I was on disability at the time, but I needed to get money each week or whatever. And, I had the stimulus check or whatever. And so I was like, well, the first thing I need to do, somehow I figured it out. The first thing I need to do is make sure I can call my parents, my mom. And so I went up to, everything was like closed too, because it was still part of COVID and everything. And a lot of places were sort of like boarded up and stuff. But this, a drugstore was open. I don't remember which one it was. If it was, I don't remember the name, the big popular ones or whatever. And they had a phone in there. And the phone wasn't expensive. It was like $50 for the phone. And then you had to sign up for service or whatever. I think I ended up buying that same day minutes. I had to buy minutes for the phone. But then when I tried to load them, there was like some ridiculously long number, and I couldn't really write it down. I didn't have a pen. I had a pen and paper. I think I bought a pen and paper, but I couldn't, between using the phone and trying to get out the pen and write down this number, and it just read it off like right away. It was like, here are your minutes, here's your number, and it read it off. And I was like, how do I get, that, how do I get that, that minutes number? And I think it was somehow I could use the phone to call it or something like that. I don't actually remember how that worked. But what I eventually did is I eventually was able to connect to Wi-Fi. So I connected to Wi-Fi with the phone. And then there was instructions about how to sign up for the phone or whatever. And I just signed up. And I didn't get really, the phone plan at the time, I can't remember which one this was, but it was the one where you get like all the minutes you want and text, but very little data. So I didn't have very much data. So I had to use Android. I'd previously used iPhone, and I had to go in and there's one way. What you can do is you can cut off the amount of daily data you use on the phone. And so I limited the data on the phone because I didn't want the data to go over, and I didn't want to cut off the minutes. I thought, what they'll probably do in terms of dealing with like credit card companies and cell phone companies and gyms and stuff is that if you use all the data, they'll say you can't use the cellular anymore or something like that. So I limited the data on Android, and I know that's a function on Android you can do. And so that way I just didn't really use any data on the phone. And so I kept my subscription or whatever, so I could call my mom and say, hey, maybe, there's something, I don't want to get, I don't want to be out of here or not have not be able to go anywhere basically, And so, a long time ago, 20 years before, I had sort of the same thing happened. And what I'd done is I'd just in sort of a, an acting thing or whatever, I sold the car that I had. And at the time they would give me a little bit of money in cash, and then the rest was in a check. And it was like over a holiday weekend or something. Anyway, I ended up I took a bus from Seattle to Los Angeles, and I was basically, I ended up basically being homeless there too. but only, well, I don't actually remember how long it was, because what I planned to do was use the money. I didn't really actually have like a solid plan. I hadn't actually gone on medication at that time, um, but I stayed at a hostel, like in the Santa Monica area, right there, right in Santa Monica, and then I bought like really inexpensive, frozen food to cook there or whatever. But but there was a holiday. It was in the fall, either I think it was Columbus Day. And when I went to go to the bank, they were closed, and I didn't realize it. And so I didn't have any money that day. And so they basically, they basically, said you can't stay at the hostel because you hadn't paid that day. And so I don't really remember what happened after that. I know I did. I know what happened that night. I did not stay anywhere. I basically stayed out wherever I could. And I had basically because I had sold my car, I hadn't planned on packing anything, so I didn't have like a backpack or anything. And I basically just had, sort of like whatever, like at the time there were like grocery bags or whatever, not plastic sacks, but like some type of bag I could carry like a jacket in or a sweatshirt or something. And I don't remember how many days after that. I thought it was none or something like that, but maybe I went back and stayed at the hostel again. But I eventually, it was sort of a transition of taking medication, and it hadn't really started working. I was still taking the medication that I'd been given, but it hadn't actually worked yet. And I think I needed to increase the amount it was on. But eventually my mom and my dad at the time drove down. And somehow back then, because I'd used a lot of calling, I didn't have a cell phone or anything. I used like calling cards and pay phones, and you had to like remember the digits on the calling cards and stuff. And so somehow I remember my mom and my dad came down and they picked me up, and I was just like, it was like I had sort of like disappeared or whatever. And so anyway, so this phone, I got, and I ended up using it. I could call and talk to my mom, and I could give her a phone number that I had. I used this for a little while. And then eventually, they canceled, like a year later or whatever, they canceled. No, maybe they didn't cancel the plan. But, I think they somehow, I can't remember what, I think I just had it for cellular, and it was like a backup phone or something. Maybe I went and I got another phone. I think what I ended up doing is I ended up going and I got this phone. And so this is a Motorola E something. And then this is I went out and I was at a Fred Meyer. I was staying with my parents or whatever. And I bought an even cheaper phone. This phone was on sale. You would not believe it, discounted for $10. And this was one with Kroger Wireless. I did a post about this. And this one, you can take the back off too, but there's a sticker on it that says, don't remove the battery. So I used this, and this one had for a monthly amount, it had unlimited talk and text, and then it had unlimited data up until like 25 gigs, and then they said they slowed down the data. So I was like, I did that, and I did it with, it was Kroger Wireless, which was from a Fred Meyer. But by that time I was not, I was staying at my parents, and we were sort of figuring out how I was going to be, if I was going to, sort of recover or anything like that. And so this is a Fox Miro, and I like this phone. The only problem I found with some of these phones is that the Fox Miro was like a little bit more, like it was a little bit more advanced. I think they were the same size of phone in terms of how much they could hold. But the Fox Miro, definitely the battery would go out like right away. It was just like right away the battery would go out. The Motorola, you see, still has battery on there, and let me see if I can get into it again. Yeah, so this phone basically works. If I, and I don't know, a lot of times I had problems with if you use a carrier and then if you try to port, they say they lock the SIM and everything like that. And so this one still has all this data and everything on it, and this one looks like it still works. This one, the battery would wear out, but I didn't have a plan for this one. I couldn't get the data that I wanted on it. I think 3 GB or something like that, it'll wear out, and then you don't have then you got to pay for more data or whatever. So yeah, so I still have this phone, and so yeah, it works. I don't actually need, to get rid of it or to throw it away or anything. And then this phone was my dad's phone, and he had discarded it because he couldn't get it to work, or it was his older phone or something. And what I did is I went into it, and I basically just reset it as a new phone or whatever. I got into it and there wasn't anything on it or whatever, and I basically just reset it. What I thought it was my phone or Jim's phone, I can't remember. But it was just sort of like an old, and this is a 5S, and it's a 5S phone, and sort of, it was like, well, my parents said, well, we have some of this old stuff. Like we had, my mom had like a couple old iPads or something, and it was like, one of those that you can't upgrade the operating system anymore. And then this one, which I already talked about. Now, the thing with these phones is that, the battery in it, the batteries, which are the lithium ion, which you've had all these fires in the, if they get wet or whatever, they start a fire, which is like all these electric vehicles, they're talking about the firefighters having to put on, 7 hours of water, of constant rushing water. And I guess if the battery breaks or cracks, air gets in and water gets in, it basically starts a fire. So, so I know that having this, what I initially thought, oh, you'd keep it for a long time or whatever, then it could be like something like, it could be like a collector's item or something or whatever. Not this specific phone, but the idea of that, of like, stuff with technology could last a long time. The problem is that eventually the battery in it may break down. And if it breaks down or something, it can get moisture in it, or air in it, air and moisture. With air, there's moisture. And that would actually cause, something to, ignite or cause a fire. So there is sort of a lifetime, a lifespan on these. And, and so eventually, if you were to keep this for a really long time, the plastic or whatever on it would break down, it would crack, it would allow air in and moisture in, even if it's just a little bit or whatever, and it could become dangerous. So, so eventually, and I don't know what they're going to do with all those old, like, iPhone first generation or second generation iPhone that has a battery in it. They must do something where they sort of confidentially remove the battery and then keep it as, the untouched item or whatever, but I don't know if it's supposed, if you have one in a box or whatever, and you seal it or whatever, I guess theoretically you could airtight seal it and say, well, no air can get in, so no moisture can get in. And that may solve the problem. But the idea of having, like, in 100 years or something, some iPhone 1, that's like valuable, like a piece of art or something, eventually, you have to remove that battery. And so, and since, all my old stuff, I didn't have an iPhone 1, I had an iPhone 2, but eventually that stuff, it's, for me, it ends up being, like a coffee maker where it's like, well, is it, someone would look at it and they'd be highly critical. They'd say, well, it's got a chip in it, or it's been used, it's not sealed in the box, or this or that. And if you, tried to spend the time to sell it or whatever, you would probably not get very much for it or whatever, and so, so I don't know, and all my, the stuff, the iPhone 2 or whatever, I think I had a crack in it or whatever. And, it's just like, probably, I didn't save it or whatever. I threw out a bunch of stuff as I was moving towards, eventually being homeless or whatever. So I don't really know what to do with these. And I guess what I'd probably do is just keep it for as long as I know that I can actually make it work or function. And then once it doesn't do that, eventually just, throw it away or whatever. You know, but I was really surprised, because, from when the time cell phones came out and, how expensive they were and how it would be really difficult to get one, I just did not think that, when I was in a shelter and they'd cut off my phone basically. So I had no service on my phone and I didn't have any way to call my mom. And, the way I was when I was younger was I would, use a payphone. And it was sort of like, well, all the payphones, obviously all the payphones have basically been removed. And, all the things you might have used to have done, like call collect. I mean, I remember there were a lot of times, if you could just get to a payphone, you could call collect. And, they'd ask you for your name and, you'd say your name. And then I don't know if you'd give a message or whatnot or something. But, if you had to, in a bad instance or something, they could connect a collect call. And of course it was expensive at the time, but like $8 or $10 or something, $20 or something, which was considered way expensive for a phone call. But if you were in a bad spot or something, you had to get a hold of, a parent or somebody who could somehow know where you are. That was a big thing. A lot of times, somebody has a cell phone or something, they're technically, someone who's monitoring cell phones or whatever knows about where they are. It's sort of tough, right? Like if you have a cell phone, somewhere in oversight of everything, they can, say, here's where you are or whatever. But, if you didn't have, before cell phones or whatever, you pretty much had to get to a payphone, and call and say, hey, like, I don't know where I am or I'm lost or, something happened or, and, I got left somewhere or whatever, can you come pick me up or something would happen, so. And I think about that sometimes too, where you would, you might plan something and say, well, what are you guys doing Saturday or Sunday? We'll meet you at the entrance of, the park or the exhibit or whatever, or the event, at 4:00 or something. And, then, the day would go by or the weekend would go by, or the week, you'd talk to somebody on Wednesday and say, okay, I'll meet you there at 4:00. And then, sure enough, at 4:00, you could go there and you could say, oh, hey, I see you, how are you doing? But between Wednesday or Tuesday or Monday or whatever, Thursday or Friday and 4:00, you usually didn't do like daily texts. I mean, a lot of times people today, they say, well, are we going to do something on this weekend or whatever? And they may text all week up until the time, and sometimes they cancel, sometimes they don't, or they say we'll text, when we're on our way or whatever, And so a lot of times stuff that would happen was like, 4 or 5 days or something, and you might do a phone call or something before, but it was basically, you would do an answering machine type thing or whatever, leave a message on the answering machine, and then you would say, okay, we'll meet and do something or whatever. So I also don't think that has been totally lost either. I just think people check in more, It's sort of like, natural for what people do to check in. So anyhow, I hope you're doing good. And I guess I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.